Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's John. One of the downsides of not making videos on a regular basis, and no, I don't really have a good excuse for that, is that even though I'm not making videos, I still get books on every bit as regular a basis as I used to when I made videos regularly. And because of that, I have several videos in which I need to dedicate just regularly showing you books that have been stacking up over the past several months. The video I thought I would start with is that time of year. For me, it was October 2nd. That is associated, at least in the United States, with book hauls. For me, that is sort of the time of the symbol of fall, even though fall-like weather just started where I live, maybe in the past 7 to 10 days. Our fall library annual sale was on a Thursday, October the 2nd. I pay a little extra fee to get in a day early with all the library members, and we get sort of first picking at the selection. It's a huge auditorium. I think it's the size of one or two basketball courts, and it's just lined full of tables that are stacked spine up with books. And I got 15 or 16 books: biography, medieval history, a little bit of science, history of ideas, stuff like that. If you watch the channel, you have a somewhat vague idea of what I read. So I wanted to show you those books, and then I can finally put them away and never read them like all good booktubers do. So I will start with a book that I was actually happy to find because we had made plans in my Discord reading group to read it together. And then I think maybe a couple of us yoinked on the agreement. We'll read it eventually, but maybe not before the end of the year. The book is Simon Schama's Citizens, A Chronicle of the French Revolution. And this is sort of a social and cultural history of, let's see. I don't know how this is going to work. But kind of suggests that violence was not as big of an aberration as a lot of other historians of the French Revolution have argued, but sort of an important part of it from the very beginning. It kind of stresses the continuities of pre-revolutionary France with the revolution, instead of characterizing the revolution as an abrupt break, say with the reign of Louis the kidding, with Louis the 16th and Marie Antoinette. So, medieval history. This is a book by Helen Castor, whose name I recognize and who has been on several podcasts I listen to on a regular basis, but I've never read. So I was excited to find this. This is Blood and Roses. I'll get you the full subtitle: One Family's Struggle and Triumph During the Tumultuous War of the Roses. And this is a book about the discovery and interpretation of the Paston letters. The Pastons were a multi-generational family, mostly from the 15th century in England. And these letters, this book, looks at their letters and sort of teases out their lives, how they tried to fight and hold the land that they had, secure their social standing throughout the tumultuous Wars of the Roses between the Lancasters and the Yorks. So, Blood and Roses. Another biography. This is a really early biography by Antonia Fraser, whose books I've read, maybe 2 or 3 biographies, including her I really enjoy her biography of Marie Antoinette for some reason, which I read 10 years ago or so. This is her biography of Mary, Queen of Scots. Sorry about the glare there. Um, this kind of portrays Mary as a competent and intelligent woman who sort of fell victim to the betrayal and intrigue and religious conflict of her time. And because of the strong religious claim that she had to the English throne, she was always a threat to her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, who had her imprisoned for something like 20 or 25 years and eventually had her executed in 1587. But Queen Mary was the mother of Elizabeth's successor, James VI. So, James VI of Scotland, who would be James I of England. Okay, so we're going back even further in time with another biography. This is Alison Weir's biography of Queen Isabella. And the subtitle there is Treachery, Adultery, and Murder in Medieval England. Usually when you see subtitles like that, it's a bit of an oversell. But it's not in Queen Isabella's case. She was the consort to Elizabeth II. That would have been something. Edward II. And she was so frustrated by Edward's favoritism towards first Piers Gaveston and then later Hugh Despenser. She partnered up with Roger Mortimer. She invaded her own country, well, country by marriage at least, England in 1326. She overthrew her husband, Edward, and then ruled for a short time with her son, also named Edward, as regent, and then he eventually overthrew them and became king in his own right, and he would be King Edward III. So a very adventurous life that has all of the nouns of the subtitle: treachery, adultery, and murder. So I've also liked Alison Weir in the past. So nice, good, popular, entertaining history. Next up, I found kind of an old book. I think this was originally published in the 30s. It is A History of the Spanish Inquisition by Cecil Roth. And the Spanish Inquisition was established in 1487 under King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And it was first used to look at the sincerity of the conversions of what were called the conversos, the Muslim and Jewish converts to Christianity. But it quickly became a tool not only of church control, but also state control, because, of course, in the 15th century, the church largely was the state, and the state largely was the church. But it looks at punishments, trials, torture, interrogation, auto da fe, and how they fostered fear, conformity, all the fascinating stuff that we like to read about when we read about the train wreck that was the Spanish Inquisition. The book I maybe have the least to say about, but that I knew I wanted as soon as I saw a copy of it in good condition. Recognize that woman on the back there. That is Elizabeth Bowen. And this is the hardback of her collected stories. I have only known Elizabeth Bowen as a novelist, but I also happen to have it on good authority that she is a solid short story writer too. So if I can get all of her stories in one place, I'll gladly take them. Excuse me while my chair grumbles. This is a book and an author I always see laying around, but have never really taken the chance to pick up and read. This is Balkan Ghosts by Robert D. Kaplan. And as I understand it, it's sort of a travel guide come political history of the ethnic tensions and animosities that existed and still exist on the Balkan Peninsula. And his argument is that the history of the Balkans, which is basically what he calls the Balkan ghosts of the title, the unresolved ethnic tensions and the historical trauma, still play a major role in the politics of the region, especially after the fall of Yugoslavia. Probably a little bit more pertinent when this was published in the early 90s than it is today, but probably is going to tell me a lot of history I haven't read about in quite a while. Next is a book I didn't even know existed, but has been canonized in the Modern Library Classics edition of books. So probably should have known about it. It's by an author that I'm relatively familiar with, so I have no excuse. This is W.E.B. Du Bois's biography of John Brown. This is... Brown is mostly known for his raid on Harper's Ferry, and consequently, because of his abolitionism, was known by his more conservative contemporaries, slave supporters, as a radical, as a madman. But Du Bois casts a much more sympathetic and understanding light on him as a person, and kind of portrays him as a bit of a religious martyr for the cause of abolition. Obviously, I haven't read it yet, but that's what I glean from reading a little bit about it. Like I said, I didn't even know this existed, and I thought I knew a little bit about Du Bois's work, but glad to discover this. Showing all these books is roiling up the dust around my desk, so for the itchy nose and everything. I have also seen this, I think, online, and I think people often want exorbitant amounts for it. And then I saw it for $2, and I said, I can pay $2 for it, but I'm not going to pay, well, too much more than that. Certainly not $50 or $100 on Amazon. This is a concise little book about the ideas of Wilhelm Dilthey. He was a German philosopher of the humanities, mostly a philosopher of history, I would say. Dilthey argued for a new kind of science that you could sort of characterize as a science of human experience. He talks about theories of understanding history, historical consciousness, lived experience, and he had a really big influence on the work and thought of people like Hans-Georg Gadamer, Martin Heidegger, and Habermas. Habermas, who is still alive and, to my knowledge, working as a second generation member of the Frankfurt School. So, also, Dilthey is being republished by Princeton University Press, and I have 2 or 3 of their volumes of his work. I don't think it's everything he ever wrote, but it's the big stuff. So what I plan to do is maybe read this in conjunction with what I've got from them what they've reprinted so far. Okay, 5 more books. I have an affinity for these. They are from Cambridge, and they're the Canto Classics. Don't know how well that's showing up, but they're these nicely made paperbacks that are usually a bit pigeonholy, but whenever I see them, I just get interested in them. This is Conquest and Empire by, the subtitle there is The Reign of Alexander the Great by J.B. Bosworth. A.B. Bosworth. And this is a detailed historical study of Alexander's life, his military campaigns, and the vast empire he built pretty much by hand during the 4th century BC, and looks at his rise from Macedonian prince to legendary conqueror, and traces his ambitious military and political campaigns across Persia, Egypt, and all the way into India. There's some history of science that I always like to get a little bit of. And this is something I looked up on Goodreads. I kind of lean into Goodreads a little bit, especially with things I'm absolutely unfamiliar with. And I did not know about this book. Except it's obviously a team effort. It is by Adrian Desmond and James Moore. And it is their biography of Charles Darwin, called Darwin, the Life of a Tormented Evolutionist. And I will forgive them their use of the word evolutionist, which is usually thrown around by proponents of intelligent design to dismiss the idea of evolution. But like I said, I can overlook that. This is a biography of Darwin that especially looks at his private life, his religion, and supposedly the hesitance that he had in the lead up to the publication of On the Origin of Species. So we'll see about that. I'm also interested in Princeton University Press is republishing Janet Brown's biography, her 2-volume biography of Darwin, except they are bowdlerizing it and editing it, cutting it down, and publishing it as 1 volume. I wish they would just come out with the original 2-volume set. If anyone is at Princeton happens to be listening, you guys should really do that. But I noticed that in the spring 2026 catalog. But next, 20th century political figure. This is... Move this so I can... This is Mao. The unknown story. I don't know how much of it was unknown. But after all the sympathetic political biographies I think I've already shown you, this is perhaps rightfully a very unsympathetic biography of Mao, and talks about his rise to power, argues that he manipulated Marxism and Leninism for his own political purposes, and lied to political allies, and deliberately did things like engineer famine and instate state terror to consolidate political control. All the things we know Mao did, but this is just a biography of him. I thought I had this somewhere, but it might be in a box, and I'm not too old to be digging around for books in boxes that I put in boxes 15 years ago. So if it is, I now have another copy. I have kind of promised myself that I want to, despite having several attempts in my reading past of trying to engage with fiction from around Asia, especially Japanese and Chinese fiction, it's never really gone well for me. I don't know why that is, but I saw a copy of a Penguin Classic that was clean and beautiful, of a book I was heretofore unfamiliar with, but it's a Penguin Classic, so it probably deserves my attention. This is Shen Fu's Six Records of a Floating Life. This is kind of a, from what I understand, an autobiographical memoir of, or from 19th century China, about the daily life and struggles of a Chinese gentleman scholar and his wife through sickness and poverty and health, all the vicissitudes of life. And of the 6 records of the title, only 4 of them actually survive and are printed in the book. But I want to give, maybe get out of the United States and Europe as far as fiction goes, and try something different. Push my limits a little bit. If anyone knows of Shen Fu as a writer, or specifically 6 Records of a Floating Life, let me know. If you have any opinions on any of these books, let me know. And last, but certainly not least, is another wonderful find, another biography. It seems to be the common theme for this year's library sale. This is Victoria Glendinnings's biography of Vita Sackville West, just called Vita. I mean, yeah, that's what the biography, that's what the subtitle is too. Vita Sackville West was an aristocrat, a poet, a writer, who led a very unconventional life, had a very unconventional marriage to the English diplomat and politician Harold Nicholson, including she had several sexual relationships with other women while she was married to Nicholson, including maybe most famously Virginia Woolf. And she's also known for, despite being the oldest child, I think, of her parents, she was unable to inherit her family home, which is called Knoll. Knoll still exists, and I think is still in the family, if I'm not mistaken. And she couldn't inherit it because she lacked one very important thing, which was a penis. She didn't have one of those, so didn't get her family home. Such was life back then. But she's a fascinating figure. She's sort of hanging around all the lives of the Bloomsbury Group, especially off of Virginia Woolf's coattails. So I wanted to read this, and I know of Victoria Glendinning as a very well-known literary biographer, but I've never read anything by her. So happy to be have this as a first book by her. All right, 25 minutes. That's what I found at the library book sale back in October. I will be back with more videos, some book reviews, but mostly books that I just need to catch up on so I can put them away and, like I said, not read them like a good booktuber. If you saw anything you like, let me know. If you know about anything I mentioned or have any opinions about them, also let me know. And until next time, I hope it's not another month, but bye.